Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Case, which is a podcast where global leaders from Harvard Business School's OPM community join in a personal capacity and they share the real decisions, life lessons, and mental models which go behind building enduring companies. My guest today is Daniel Silva. He's from OPM 38. So it's been about 17 years since he has passed out of OPM. Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you here. How are you?
My pleasure, Sohin. I know that not only are we member of the OPN 38, we graduated in 2009, but we are the members of the broader OPM global community of which we are a part of. And I'm glad to join you in your podcast and your audience today.
Right. Daniel, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself and your business?
Yes, my name is Daniel Silva, and I'm from OPM 38 as far as OPM is concerned. But academically, I'm a software engineer, computer engineer. I've decided at some point, and I've co-founded DMS International, which has been a company of ours now for 29 years. I co-founded that company with my wife. So it's a family business. We are based in the Washington metro area. And over the time of having the business, I think perhaps more or less 10 years after running the business, we decided to join the OPM program, which for one to get admitted into it, you have to be of a certain size and have a need intellectually to reinforce yourself as a leader in order to get to the next level because it's a company that has been in a constant growth over time. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer, so I'm responsible for and new elements into the way that we manage or new products into the company. So in terms of introducing new products, for example, it's a fun part because you have to be creative. You have to gather the proper resources, the human resources, the equipments, and as far as software is concerned, the proper applications in order to innovate because in today's world, in today's business world, if you don't innovate, you'll be disrupted rather quickly. As one of our professors, Howard Stevenson, you might not know him, but he's been around. He's written a book on do lunch or be lunch. So in other words, he's asking you to always be in the kitchen to be preparing something new. Otherwise, you'll be the lunch by somebody else who will actually disrupt your company. So that's pretty much me. But over our conversation today, you'll get to know a little more and your audience as well.
You mentioned you and your wife co founded DMS International together. That's quite a rare journey. How did that partnership begin and what was the vision you shared when you started the company?
Well, I sort of started alone, but not for too long. Created the company. An opportunity came along a month after the creation of the company. That was a fairly hefty contract, of which I had the proper competency for in the Washington area, again, with the government. But quickly, as I got overwhelmed about other functions and particularly in the financial aspect of the business, my wife, who has been a banker in her life, saw that, the company seemed to have a great opportunity to grow. And with the financial background, she joined the company quickly to put some financial structure in the organization. And that was a game-changing phase because that is an important aspect of any organization, as you know, within the OPM program. So that's sort of how we became co-founders of the company. In fact, he is the president and CEO of DMS International, and we've been sort of thriving ever since. But as I've been asked in other interviews before, how can you mix being married and having business together? Well, you have to learn how to make concessions because conflicts sometimes in business conflicts bring innovation. Well, when I say conflicts, it's not just necessarily controversial conflict, but differences of opinion that brings innovation when you settle about the next set of actions. However, if you let such conflicts to go beyond the creativity part, it may affect your personal life. So you have to know, and I've learned over time, it's not something that I have always known, but over time you learn on how to separate the two activities, business and personal.
Daniel, so in the early days of DMS, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as founders? And how did you navigate those moments together, both as business partners and as a couple?
Well, it's fairly difficult as a startup to put the different components of a real organization in place because you wear several hats, and as you move from one hat to the other, there may be weaknesses in the way that you manage the organization. For example, HR is not necessarily my forte because I'm more of a computer engineer, but managing people is extremely important because that's your most important resource within the organization. But there is a whole process, there are rules, there are regulations about how to manage people, the payroll, health benefits, and life and other types of organizational benefits. Those are not necessarily my forte. So I have to be sort of touch and go as far as running human resources. For me, it's more the engineers. If I gather a few engineers as my immediate support. Those people are the ones that I focused most because I have to take care of them so that we can push the agenda forward. So as we were growing, we had to put people that have those types of skill sets to just focus on that aspect of the organization. Finance, the same. Marketing is not, the computer engineers are not great marketers. They're not, in fact, sometimes not so expressive about what they do. So you have to have people that understand the objectives and the mission of the organization and articulate the mission and the vision properly. So there are a bunch of elements within an organization that the leader does not necessarily have all the competency to run, but as long as you can nurture your team, them keep people, it's very important to keep the people that you recruited at the beginning, and for them to believe in the organization and to keep the intellectual capital that comes with time and exchange and things of that nature.
As your company grew, how did your definition of success evolve, both personally, professionally, and also for the business?
Well, usually you're driven by a sense of self-employment. That's where it starts, whereby you decide it's a choice. You can go into a business and become an engineer and work and go up the ladder, or you can make the second choice of being an entrepreneur. it's not the easy route, I can tell you, because you may spend a year or so not getting paid, for example, when you're an entrepreneur, but you're paying everyone. You want to make sure that everybody's getting paid and that you're acquiring facilities and space and infrastructure, information technology infrastructure, especially at that time, you didn't have cloud based systems, so servers and firewalls and everything that is needed to build the company. So you have to put some sacrifice on yourself, knowing that, well, if you were working in a large organization, you would have been doing very well. But that's not what I felt like doing. I felt that the entrepreneurial aspect had some drive into it. Also, although you make a lot of sacrifices in developing a startup, but you are driven also by revenue because it's self-employment. Revenue will end up getting you paid, and if you do well enough, you may get paid very well because you make those types of decisions. So those are where the drive for the decision of going into business on our own.
You spoke about the cloud and some of the other expenses that early on could come in the way of paying yourself or finding a way to get a paycheck for entrepreneurs. Just building on that, do you think it's easier today to start a company than it was back then?
It's much easier today to start a company because
And could you just elaborate on why you feel so?
I feel so, yes. Because buying, several servers or computers, depending on what you are doing, in our case, since we are in the information technology space, can be a fairly expensive proposition. And computers, after at that time, 4 or 5 years, they needed to be changed and they needed to be replaced. So you are constantly stretching expenses on the infrastructure side, which today it's just a matter of switching more CPUs, see more storage, bringing in more applications. At that time, you had to practically build your applications and spend a lot of time in debugging and fine tuning those applications. I think today you just bring in those infrastructure and all of a sudden you feel that you are practically working as almost as a large organization. So you can focus now in what is the mission of the business, what is the vision, what types of services would you like to provide to the community, because that becomes the focus now. It's no longer about infrastructure, or every morning, every meeting is about some weakness in your IT infrastructure and things of that nature, but rather now you don't need to worry so much about it. And you can leverage the cloud since you're one subscriber among millions of people. So as I look at today's expense, for me, it's two different approaches. However, you end up spending anyway nowadays because you feel like doing so much and you have access to so many resources that you acquire more. But at least you can measure what you need, for your mission.
If you could speak to the younger version of yourself who was starting the company 29 years ago, what advice would you give him?
What advice would I give to my 30-year-old self? I would say I would not have stayed necessarily as long with one organization, but build them for sale. So I would have, my new self would have sold several companies because at different moments we had gathered what could constitute a sellable product and services organization, but continued to go into other areas, but within the same organization. So I would say, uh, build it tighter, and get into the venture sector for selling or investors. More of that than sort of that self growth type that we've gone through ourselves. Does that make sense?
Daniel, how would you define a wise man?
A wise man. Well, it's somebody who learns from experience, right? Can retain some of the lessons learned and grow from there. And I think over time, one would know it's like driving a car. You know how to speed up and when to slow down and keep a tempo. So that would be a wise man. There are all sorts of other elements within the definition of a wise man. But if it's about an entrepreneur or a leader of an organization, it's about learning. And that's mostly what's important. It's not that you are the one that's knows all, be all type of person, but to the contrary, you are getting input from people. You just crunch those pieces of information and make decisions.
Talking about your OPM journey, what made you consider OPM at Harvard Business School?
Okay. When I say we, in other words, both myself and my wife, we went through the OPM program. It's not just me, but
Nice.
we also went through the OPM program, but in different years. I think she was OPM 37 or something like that. But
So she did
we
it before you.
she did it well. We sort of switched gears and things like that, and then ended up being in different years because some years there might be an urgency, because when the two of us would travel to Boston for 3 weeks, for 3 years, etc., that would put a pressure on the company. So at some point, one of us didn't go and stopped going. So she's part of OPM 37 and I'm OPM 38. So the two of us, but it's sort of the same thing, the same method. What led us to do that? It's through doing research and finding that we needed some training and in a sort of continuing education format, as opposed to stopping the business and going into um, other programs that could be lengthier, and we could not afford to do that. And the organization, in terms of leaders, we needed to bring in as many ingredients, many advice. And the case study method attracted us as well, because I think we learned a lot through reading all those business cases. And through them, it mirrors on yourself, because now you are discovering that you are not alone on some of the pains that you see companies go through, whether it's between leaders or family business and all those different aspects that now it seems that you just asked me what is my definition of a wise man, and I said you have to learn and lessons learned. Imagine reading lots of business cases. You learn from having read and worked on those business cases. So I feel that has brought a certain method within our learning process.
Are there any professors whose conversations have stayed with you even after all these years that you find yourself revisiting?
Of course, Malhotra, for
Hmm.
sure. Negotiation is you learn how to be tough, but at the same time be flexible. I've learned about that now, which were concepts that we had never dealt with in the past. We were negotiating because, your customers, they are being tough. They are asking you to lower your prices. It's always about that and things of that nature. But if you have not been exposed to professionals in the domain of negotiation, there would be a weakness there. I think Dr. Stevenson, Howard Stevenson, is a very wise person. That's why his books is always about more of your conscience and what is your purpose, your most transformative purpose in life. It's not about business on its own, but it's your mission in life and how that can affect as many people as possible. So we learn a lot about those types of things. And in terms of family business, we were exposed as well to the challenges that families meet especially when you go over several generations of business, things start getting diluted. Some people feel that they are working more than others, but when the distribution time comes, it seems that everyone wants the same part of the whole. So those are different aspects. And some other professors, but I can feel that finance, for me, finance was a good class as well because I had some weaknesses on that side of things. But when we went through 3 sessions of finance, we understood how to calculate net present value and things like that, and the valuation of your company. And that's something that we've instilled into the company now. We continue to update the valuation all the time. Otherwise, you might lose track of that because you have the contractual part that's bringing in revenue. But what is your organization's worth? What is it worth? That's something that needs to be updated all the time. And even if you don't do it yourself, you need consultants to sort of come in and help, and they know your organization very well. They look at the numbers, the figures, and help you at getting an update all the time.
Lastly, is there a book that you want to talk about which might have influenced the way you think about life or leadership?
Recently, and one other thing about OPM, it's not just taking the class and that's over when you graduate and things like that, but you continue as an alumni to visit HBS for conferences, annual meetings, and some other special programs that they have. And somehow I would encourage one to continue to tap into those conferences, even if it's yearly or every 2 years or so. You have to visit the campus. It always brings a nice feeling to go back and see some professors of yours and things of that nature. And recently, I went into one that sort of covered where HBS is, where everybody is in one's life, especially with today's challenges, with a changing world, and we are living it directly, not like before, where it takes a lot of time for you to see the changes in world situations. But today, it seems that every morning you wake up, there is a part of the evolution that's taking place, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence and blockchain and those types of digital technologies and Web3. That is accelerating, I think, changes taking place. So one of the panelists in one of these sessions that took place was a book called The 5 Keys to Value Investing. So that's for people that outside of their personal business, but when they make a profit and things of that nature, they need to invest to diversify their portfolio. Now, how do you know where best to invest so that you don't get hurt, right? That person, GBS alumni wrote a book on investing, and it says the book is called Five Keys to Value Investing, and it's by an author called Dennis Jean-Jacques. Dennis Jean-Jacques is a GBS alumni. I think he owns an hedge fund firm,
Mhm.
and I was impressed by his presentation within a panel and purchased the book. That's a couple of months ago, and I've been trying to finish reading it, but get distracted from time to time by the business at hand. But I'm impressed by that.
Great. Thank you, Daniel. This has been a very helpful and thought provoking conversation. I appreciate your time, and I hope we speak again soon.
It's been a pleasure to address some of the questions you have, and hopefully your audience will enjoy the exchange that we've had. And I remain open for questions or other aspect of business that you may want to address.
Thank you, Daniel. Be well.
Pleasure. Take care.